Sabah everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to do a comparison between the brand new Galaxy Note 20 Ultra running One UI 2.5 and of course the recently updated Galaxy S20 Ultra that just received the One UI 2.5 update over the weekend. Now this allows me to get obviously a lot of the new features that came with the Note 20. One of them obviously is the ability of recording video with Bluetooth audio like the Pixel Buds that I have right now, for obviously all of our Galaxy S20 line of devices. This is TK. Let's go ahead and compare both of these devices since they're now running the same version of One UI 2.5.
Like and subscribe and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified to whenever we have new videos on the channel. So first off, we'll start with the specifications. There's obviously some similarities between these two devices. They're both technically the Ultras, which means they're the best of each line. This is the best of the S20 lines, and this is going to be the best of the Note 20 lines. One thing to keep in mind is that the S20 is slightly heavier because it actually does carry a bigger battery. This is a 5,000 milliampere battery as opposed to the 4,500 that we have here. And the reason we got this is because primarily we have an S Pen, which took some spacing. As you can see, the difference between them aesthetically is not that much. Although the Note 20, because of the sharp corners, definitely feels a little bit bigger than the S20 that we have on the right. Both are supporting a 6.9-inch display. Let's go ahead and turn on the display. Both support beautiful displays. Both of them are AMOLED displays, 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED directly from Samsung. Both are running the 3200 by 1400 basically QHD resolution, also supporting the ability of going all the way up to 120 Hz for the refresh rate. So very nice, and again, some of the best technologies that you can get on the market. I did make sure to basically import the same applications directly from my S20 over to the Note 20. That's why you see that the actual UI, even though I'm running the Nova Prime launcher, they look pretty much very similar in the overall aesthetics. And the reason why I waited till today to actually do the comparison between the two is that now both of them are running One UI 2.5. As you saw with the video in the intro, I used the S20 Ultra here to be able to record audio using the Pixel Buds that I have here. Although at launch they announced that they would work directly with the Galaxy Buds Live, which I've also used here with the Note 20 as far as the testing. Both of them have the same features. Now both of them have the same software features supported on the device, which means both of them are going to support wireless DeX, which is something that was unique to the Note 20 line. So DeX is now present right here. I'm actually able to click it. And if I'm connected to the same network overall, they'll both be able to provide me access to the same TVs and monitors that are capable to support DeX. Now the standard version of DeX is still supported here. There's no big difference there, but the use of wireless DeX is the big game changer here, because now we no longer have to actually even have it connected to the TV. Wireless over Wi-Fi, and it looks great as you guys are looking at this demo real quick over on my Samsung TV, and this should be able to work on any TV that supports DLNA. Now as far as the actual specifications, both in the US we're starting at 12 gigs of RAM and go up to basically 16 gigs of RAM here on the S20 Ultra. Although as far as the storage, both will start at 128 gigs of internal storage all the way up to 512, and of course the Ultras support the SD card, which means we are going to have SD cards expansion. In the US, both are running Qualcomm chipset, so the 865 here to the 865 Plus, but in the European as well as the Middle East, you're running the Exynos 990 on both of them. So they're very much the same processor in the European and Middle East, only in the US as well as in Asia that you actually get the Qualcomm chipset, which is the 865 Plus, slightly faster than what you get here, as well as the 865 here. So when we look at the cameras in the back, we have pretty much similar sensors. 108 is the primary sensor on both of them. We have a 48 megapixel sensor here for the telephoto as opposed to a 12, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and of course another 12 megapixel ultra wide here. The last sensor here is a time of flight sensor as opposed to a laser autofocusing system, which Samsung has been using to basically fix some of the focus seeking or focus issues that were plaguing the S20 Ultra, although it did get better, a lot better since the beginning. Both of them are supporting basically wireless charging and reverse wireless charging, as well as fast wire charging. So 5,000 milliampere here as opposed to the 4,500, and again, both will support wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. The front-facing cameras here are slightly different, a 40 megapixel here on the S20 Ultra as opposed to a 10 megapixel here on the Note 20 Ultra. So again, a few differences when it comes down to specifications, even on the cameras. Both are supporting in-display fingerprint sensor. Let's go ahead and unlock the display here. And of course, both are going to be working really good when it comes down to third-party launchers. One UI 2.5 did bring a few features that we're definitely going to be checking them out, specifically like the one in the camera here. Also the ability of using the actual other devices to control our phone. So an example would be right here. There's this feature here, call and text on other devices, that's also been added in there. And of course, all the other options that we normally get within One UI. Now, I did want to go ahead and run a couple of benchmarks just to show that there is an actual difference between the 865 and the 865 Plus. I'll go ahead and turn on the history section here. I ran it on both sections. Now, I did run it twice just to make sure that we were running it correctly. On the S20 Ultra, the maximum we're able to get is 883 to 3027 as opposed to 956 to 3147. There's definitely a big improvement between the two. Is it noticeable on a day-to-day usage? Absolutely not. These numbers will really only matter if we're looking at benchmarks. So at the end of the day, I don't necessarily say that this is a great way to say, look, this one is a better phone than this one. By the numbers, yes. By the reality of life and how things work, no. They pretty much run the exact same way. And the difference between the two here is literally negligible. When we go down to the actual compute section, let's go ahead and turn it on here. We'll notice that, again, the difference is basically a big difference here, about 500 almost, between the 865 and the 865 Plus. But gaming-wise, everything that we do on a day-to-day basis, wireless charging, DeX, all of those things are going to work exactly the same. Now, one of the other differences that we definitely need to understand between the two is that Samsung decided that the approach to the QHD 120 frames per second, I would say conundrum that's going on right now, is addressed slightly differently. Both support a QHD resolution display and both support up to 120 Hz refresh rate. Unfortunately, you can't have both at the same time, which means if we want to have 1080p and 120 frames per second, we can't have 120 frames per second with QHD. So under smoothness here, if I want to be able to go to high refresh rate, I'll go ahead and hit apply here on the right. I'm only able to do it here on the right side by selecting it. So you see here, high. I'm actually able to force it to be 1080p, 120 frames per second all the time. On the Note 20 Ultra, it's actually in an adaptive mode, which is kind of similar to the way we see it on gaming monitors now, where the display will adjust to whatever the refresh rate is needed for the specific app. Here, it pretty much kind of does the same, although it is technically locked in at 120. So, but both will not support QHD resolution. So if I want to be able to go to QHD resolution on both of these devices, we lose the option of 120. So it's QHD 60 or 1080p 120. And again, both of them are featuring pretty much the same feature when it comes to that, except that it's on auto mode here, explicitly called out where it's not necessarily here. Now, jumping over some picture samples between the two, again, what I'm using here is the same sensor, and of course, we're standing in front of the same roses. And I'll go ahead and use the wide-angle lens. Of course, we're looking at these images, and then flipping over to the telephoto lens. I do want to say that the differences in lenses in the telephoto provide a slightly different point of view, which means I do need to step back a little bit when using the S20 Ultra. Now, I wanted to also do a quick comparison with just a landscape image using the wide-angle lens, and then of course jumping over to the standard focal length. Now, when it comes to telephoto, both of them will have slightly different options. I'm able to actually go all the way up to 50x on the Note 20 Ultra. And of course, on the S20 Ultra, we're able to go all the way to 100. There is actually no 50, which is the weird part about it. There's basically 30 to 100 right away. Now, that's due to the fact that we have this slightly bigger megapixel camera that we have here, the 48 megapixel sensor. Although both of them are not necessarily the best images when you get down to those levels, I would say technically, just use them as basically the one, and basically the only other option available is like either 2 or 4 times. Those are going to be the best performance when it comes down to the zoom level on these devices. But both of them are now featuring the new feature when it comes down to Pro Mode Video, which is really nice. So if I jump over to the More section, there's an option here. It says Pro Video, and the same thing here, Pro Video. We have the ability of configuring many things on here. One thing to keep in mind is that they're both set to be on the back sensor, so none of them are going to be supporting the front-facing sensor. Also, both of them will support the ability of using Bluetooth headsets. So what I'll say here is I'll go ahead and turn on my Pixel Buds here, and I'll turn on the Buds Live on the left. And as soon as they connect to the device, it'll give us the option of actually selecting it as an option. So you'll see right there, audio. And I guess I needed to take out the actual earpiece. And again, you get both of them set up to be this way. The one thing to mention to you guys is you're also able to get the configuration of front-facing mics and back-facing mics on both. Because I don't have this out, actually, it's not letting me keep the selection, so I do need to move it. So you notice right there, I'm able to configure it. And once you have it put in your ear and it detects that it's in your ear, it'll allow you to select it on the Note 20. But again, same features, same nice options that we see on both of them, which is really nice because One UI 2.5 also brought in one feature that I was really missing on the S20 Ultra, and that's the ability of using Android gestures with third-party launchers, which was actually for basically disabled by default in One UI 2.1. One thing I do want to mention though, if you do end up using Good Lock, which is a really cool set of applications, you're able to install them directly from Samsung, and as you see, these are all the Good Lock options that are available directly on the Note 20. As you can see, it's also available here. There's one small problem that I noticed that when I did upgrade to One UI 2.5, under the swiping section in 2.1, all I was able to do is basically use a swipe gesture for where the buttons would normally be. And that was basically because I was using a third-party launcher. So to use the normal gestures that we have here, I had to use the One UI launcher. Nothing's wrong with it. I personally just prefer Nova. Now with 2.5, we now have the ability of turning on these options, which allow us to actually use the back gestures the way we normally have them. Although there is a small problem with this, and I'll explain to you guys what I mean. If you use one-handed mode, it's essentially a module here under the family section called One-Handed Operations Plus. This is a feature that was added by Samsung for their devices to allow us to actually add gestures here, which basically gives me the ability of using this. And those are little options that I'm able to use. I'm also able to basically swipe between different apps. I'm also able to actually initiate certain functions like these. All of these are customized directly within One UI in Good Luck and of course One-Handed Plus. I've been using it since the S20 was basically became available on the S20. Unfortunately, this circumvents the back function in these gestures, which means if I try to use this with it, and again, I'm just here, I'm going to go in and I swipe from the left, it's swiping and it's still using the One-Handed Plus. The only way for me to be able to use the gestures, the normal gestures, is to actually stop using One-Handed Plus operation. So I'll go ahead and turn it off. At this point, I'll go home. I'm actually now able to use the back button the normal way it's supposed to be. So keep that in mind. If you use One-Handed Operations Plus and this is one of your features that you love using, at this point I would probably just say stick with the normal gestures, the one that you have them before, which is the swipe up buttons. So at least you have the ability of using the Recents app whenever you need it. And of course you can appreciate the new logos and the new animation that we get there. We took a second and we looked at some of those images. Let's go ahead and take a look at some videos directly from the front-facing and the back-facing sensors, and of course comparing how the microphones perform on both the S20 Ultra and the Note 20 Ultra. Now I'm recording a video on both the Note 20 Ultra and the S20 Ultra. I'm only looking in the center because both of them feature the same style of camera, although it's a 40 megapixel sensor on the front-facing camera here on the S20 Ultra as opposed to the 10 megapixel sensor on the front. But both of them can record 4K 60 frames per second, of course. So let's go ahead and switch over to a quick comparison between the back-facing sensors. Now we're doing a similar comparison again, back-facing sensor 4K 60 frames per second on both the S20 Ultra and the Note 20 Ultra. I'm switching over between the audio and video between both cameras just so that we can see the comparison and of course how does the audio compare. Both are featuring the same exact version of the software, One UI 2.5. Now, of course, we want to go ahead and do a quick speakers comparison. Both of them supporting Dolby, both of them supporting, of course, stereo speakers with the top earpiece and the bottom firing speaker. Although the speaker on the S20 Ultra is on the right and the one on the Note 20 Ultra is on the left. So, personal preference, of course, this goes without saying. So let's go ahead and start off with the S20 Ultra. So overall performance as far as sound, they actually sound pretty much very similar as far as the experience. Let's go ahead and start talking about some of the things that make each one of them unique. So first and foremost, obviously we're going to have to say is that the Note is a Note, which means we have S Pen. The S Pen functionality can only work on a Note, which actually pretty much has a unique type of a display that allows us to do so. And also that allows us to be able to basically take screen memos, writing, actually customize different options into this. We're also able to just basically do smart select. So let's go ahead and select this one. I can actually select here on the screen and I can customize this experience. I can sign documents using this. I can also use this to actually initiate gestures. So let's go ahead and jump into the gallery application. I'm going to use my mouse and I'm actually going to go ahead and switch between them. I'm also able to jump into the camera, which also helps me kind of, let's go ahead and get out of this mode. I'm actually able to switch between the different modes. And I'm also able to switch between the cameras on the front as well as the back. How you doing? And of course, I can just do scribbling here and it takes a screenshot. There's a whole bunch of different options that we're able to do with the S Pen that we cannot do without it. This, unfortunately, did come at a small compromise. And what I mean by a compromise, I'm talking about the fact that this device supports a 500 milliampere battery smaller than what we get with the S20 Ultra. Again, same form factor, but that additional S Pen took away some of that part, and of course now we have a smaller battery, which also means that battery life, and as far as all-day battery life, the S20 Ultra will definitely be a little bit better there. Now, as far as the actual auto functionality, I feel like both of them are pretty much the same, although on the Note 20 Ultra we have it more of a closer to an adaptive thing, kind of like how our gaming monitors work, and it should be able to contribute to a better battery life overall. But again, both of them supporting exactly a QHD 120 Hz refresh rate at 1080p, and of course QHD alone. When it comes down to benchmarks, we need to keep in mind, and yes, the 865 Plus will definitely perform better than the 865. But they're both 865 processors, both of them are 5G capable, both of them are supporting the same technology. So when it comes down to connectivity, there's not much that's going to be a big difference between the two. And of course, both will be provided and available from multiple carriers, so AT&T, Verizon, as well as basically, Sprint, or even with T-Mobile. So no issue there, and they're both going to be international devices. Although only in the US that we have a difference in processors. In the European market as well as the Middle East, they both have the same processor, which is the Exynos 990. Now that the software on the S20 Ultra has been updated to One UI 2.5, the differences between both of these devices actually kind of became very, very small. It comes down to the fact that do you need an S Pen or do you not need an S Pen? If you don't need an S Pen, the S20 Ultra is more than capable of providing you the same experience. I do have to say that the Note 20 Ultra definitely has a little bit better performance when it comes down to focusing. Although when I did do a comparison between the two in a video pro mode, and the ability of just seeing basically how fast is the focusing going on, as I'm showing you guys with the video right now, both of them actually performed quite well when you tap to focus on the subject. So basically you're locking the focus on a specific person as opposed to using autofocusing. When it comes down to autofocusing, of course, the Note 20 Ultra definitely benefits from having the laser autofocusing system there, as opposed to a time-of-flight sensor on the S20 Ultra. So a little bit of a difference there, but both are supporting high megapixel cameras, 108 megapixel cameras on each one of their devices. When it comes down to pictures and videos, it's going to come down to the basically personal preference. I feel like both of them perform quite well. The autofocusing issue, as I mentioned to you guys there, that kind of got fixed with the Note 20 Ultra, but it's not super bad that the S20 Ultra is just not a usable camera. It is, you just need to basically do that touch to focus. The Bluetooth functionality is definitely very nice. The wireless DeX is really cool. The ability of using gestures now on non-stock launchers is always great, but keep in mind the good lock functionality with the one-hand operation plus. If you have that turned on, the experience pretty much stays the same. You're not going to really be able to use the standard navigation, as a one-handed operations plus overrides that on both sides, which I feel like actually is a better configuration, because now we have the ability of going swipe center, swipe up, and swipe down on both sides, adding a lot more gesture support. But to answer that question at the beginning of the video, which one should you choose? Obviously, we're comparing both of these devices. It's literally going to come down to the fact is, do you want a bigger battery or do you want an S Pen? That's really the big comparison. Do you care about the battery size and you don't really care about the S Pen? Then I think the S20 Ultra is what you need to go with. And if you do need an S Pen, obviously the battery is not going to be an issue. The Note 20 Ultra is going to give you the best experience. I think the laser autofocusing did fix some of the concerns that people had with the S20 Ultra, but I do see that, as you showed you with the comparison, they both performed quite well. Let me know in the comments below, of course, what do you guys think? Like and subscribe as usual, and I'll see you guys in the next video.